Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Not sure when, where, or how you're listening. We're just super glad that you are. I'm John Buzby along with Marty Sheehan. This is the Class 2 podcast where we'll recap the quarterfinals and preview the semifinal games of the DIAA tournament. Class 1 and Class 3 will drop separately. And early this morning, or mid-morning, I should say, we dropped a podcast specifically about the Smyrna Middletown incident that happened after the post-game handshake, as well as some fun facts and figures about the tournament that Marty put together. So be sure to check that out as well. So a total of 4 podcasts dropping today for your pleasure. Rainy day here if you're listening on Sunday. So perfect day to listen to all 4. All right, the Class 2 quarterfinals. And again, next weekend, it's only the Class 2 teams that play because the Class 1 and 3 title games have been decided. Middletown against Dover in Class 3 and Laurel St. Elizabeth in Class 1. But still 2 games to go next week. We are hoping that those games, one is scheduled on Friday and one is scheduled on Saturday, probably nighttime for both of them, at least on Friday, because unlike this past Friday, that was sort of a holiday for a lot of people. Next Friday is not. Kids will be in school, people will be at work. So if there's a Friday game, it'll be at night. One of them will be, we'll see where it's going to be. It's going to depend on where it shakes out. One is going to be at Caravel. The other one will be at St. Mark's. Actually, that's already been decided. So, you know where you're going once they get decided. And we will put out on our social media accounts. It has not been announced as of 11:35 on Sunday morning when and where those games are going to be. But we will make sure that news gets out to people through our media channels. So, only one of the top 4 teams in Class 2 did not advance to the semifinals. And Marty, we talked all year long that this would be the class where there would be some parity.
Yes.
In fact, a lot of people thought DMA would be in the mix, and they didn't get out of the first round. As an example of the parity that is happening here. The one team of the top 4 that did not get in was Howard. They were beat by Archmere in a game that nobody thought would be the score that it ended up being. We'll talk about them in a second. We're going to start at the top of that bracket, though, with Caravel basically handing it to Newark, 42-0. Caravel ranked number 1, Newark number 8. Newark had a nice win over Tower Hill in the first round. And again, 2 different goals for these teams. Goal for Caravel is to win a state championship at the beginning of the season. While every team will tell you their goal is to win a state championship, the realistic goal for Newark was to make the playoffs and win a game. They hosted a game for the first time since 2011, back when Butch Simpson was the head coach at Newark. So quite an accomplishment for Newark, not only to be in the playoffs for the second year in a row, big feather in their cap, hasn't happened in a long time, but then to also get to host a game. So hats off to Coach Jody Russell. Has that program moving in the right direction in the class that they clearly belong, which is in Class 2. They finished their season at 8-4. But Caravel, 11-0, came into this game outscoring their opponents 375-49. Now, as they'll admit, they didn't face the toughest of opponents, or at least they weren't in their literally class or figuratively class in some cases. And so they were just the better team. They went up 7-0, 14-0, 21-0 at the half, then went up 28-0, 35-0. And 42-0. So it was just, to Newark's credit, Marty, it wasn't 35-0 at the half, which if there may have been a bet on that, somebody may have taken that bet, and I couldn't have blamed them given Caravel's performance and their ability to put up points. I've watched them in person. I've watched them on tape several times. Their defense is just as good as their offense. And so it's no surprise that they've been shutting out teams and limiting teams to 49 points total, including the Newark game. And so nobody would have been shocked if this wasn't a running clock when the team kicked off to start the second half, but it wasn't. So hats off to Newark and all the Newark players. I watched this game from start to finish. They never gave up, even knowing that, coming into the fourth quarter, they were pretty much done. They kept playing. And so that's a positive thing for the Newark program from top to bottom. And it all starts at the top with head coach Jody Russell. So Coach, congratulations on a great season. For Coach John Reed, he's got his team where they want to be. They're in the semifinals. And they're going to take on an Archmere team. We'll talk about that matchup when we're finished talking about both these games. But so the Caravel game went as expected on the scoreboard, Marty. I was surprised the score didn't get higher earlier in the game, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that.
No, I was too. I thought this felt very much like the Laurel Tatnall matchup where you expected it to get out of hand once Laurel started scoring. The same way here, it looked like Caravel was going to make their way up and down the field with ease, but the Newark defense stiffened at times, and they did it. I thought 21-0 is a very respectable halftime score in this game compared to what I thought was coming. Um, a very workmanlike performance from Caravel. You know, they didn't panic at all. They ran their offense. Sometimes it worked to perfection. Sometimes it didn't. It didn't seem to matter. They just knew that they were going to be their own worst enemy in this
Mhm.
game, and it, you know, as and that's no disrespect to Newark. It's just Caravel's on a different level from Newark right now. I talked about him last week. That Truman Awardo, Awarda, excuse me, the
Mhm.
quarterback for Caravel, 2 touchdowns, 53 and 33 yards to JT Wingo. He also returned, or JT Wingo also returned a punt 50 yards for a touchdown. Jordan Miller and Craig Miller, who have been the backs that have kind of carried this team throughout the year, combined for 160 yards on the ground. Again, nothing out of that was unexpected other than the fact that we thought the score could get more out of hand. You know, it's
Mhm.
so funny to me thinking Caravel scored 42 points and their defense the entire season has given up only 7 more points than that. It's just
Right.
that defense is insane. And again, Makai Carmen leads the way for them. I've repeatedly called him the hardest hitter in the state. He had another great game. Uh, they're rolling right
Mhm.
now.
Yep.
And you wonder, you know, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, but that defense is going to be very difficult for anyone to penetrate. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens going forward.
Yeah, and again, that game will. I'm going to guess it's. I'm guess going to be a 7 o'clock game. The question will be whether it's on a Friday night or a Saturday night. And
Yep.
again, I hope the DIAA separates it. Actually, it's the football committee that actually does the scheduling,
Yeah.
and the DIAA has to approve it. But unless there's a reason, they wouldn't approve it. So I'm hoping the football committee, Jim Comagese chairs that committee, that they separate those two games like they separated all 4 games that happened this weekend. It was great. There were two
It
games on
was.
Saturday, or one at 1, one at 7, and on Friday there was one at 1 and one at
Same
7.
thing.
So
Yep.
you literally could have gone to every game if you
Yeah,
wanted
you're
to,
right.
or sit home on the couch and watch it like you and I did. You always had that choice
That's
as
right.
well. So Carroll is going to take on number 5 Archmere, 13-0 win over Howard. A scoreless first half, which shocked the world. That was the
Yes.
tweet that everybody
Ooh,
sent out. It wasn't even a score. It was that
no.
nobody scored
Right.
in the first half. Archmere scored in the third quarter to go up 6-0. And then Cole Fenice had a 3-yard touchdown run with 11 minutes left in the fourth quarter to go up 13-0. The Auks revenged a 38-34 loss to Howard back on September 24th. One of several revenges in the playoffs this year. We mentioned on the class, on another one of the posit drop
Yep.
today, that in class 3A, 4 teams avenged losses during the regular season. So that's kind of fun to see. Archmere had 5 turnovers in that September 24th game. So certainly one of the major reasons they lost it. That didn't happen in this game. So John Belace and the Archmere Auks are going to head to the semifinals with the goal being to get back where they were last year, and that is to Delaware Stadium.
And this is amazing. I mean, Archmere has a lot of players play both ways. I was shocked by the halftime score. First of all, the first half was a mixture of just incredibly long drives from both teams that would die within sight of the goal line of the other team. There was a lot of going for it on fourth down in the first half that didn't work out. Again, Howard, boy, RJ Matthews, and he has an offer from Delaware State, which could possibly go where his dad played, but he was under fire all afternoon. That Archmere defense was just all over him, didn't allow him a lot of time to throw the ball, a lot of rushed throws. So I give the defense all the credit in the world. These teams combined to score 72 points the first time they played,
Right.
38-34. It is amazing to me that Howard, we talked about the shutouts. I wasn't surprised that Newark got shut out. I am still stunned that Howard was shut out. They've had a really good offense all year. They came in averaging 34 points a game. So for them to be shut out is just amazing. We get the workmanlike performance again from Chris Albera, rushes for 54 and a touchdown, passes for 97. Aiden Ballou, 6 tackles, PJ Blessington, 6 tackles. I think uh, I, it- the punting game for Cole Fenice, I forgot that he was the punter, and I kept seeing this guy place the ball inside the 20-yard line. I finally looked it up. Um, and it's Cole Finese. So he had an outstanding game. Rushed 18 times, 126 yards and a touchdown, caught 3 passes for 33 yards, had 10 tackles, and oh, by the way, placed both his punts inside the 20-yard line.
Not
So
bad.
a great performance. And, that played a huge role because it became a field position game for Howard, and they were just never able to get out from being buried in their own territory, especially in the second half. So, Howard, a great improvement on last year for Dan Ritter's team. They claimed the number 4 seed, and they earned it with the
Hmm.
wins. And boy, Archmere, we said last week, what luck Howard has to be the number 4 seed, and in the next round, in the first round they play Archmere, who we all thought was going to be one of the top 4 seeds, last year's
Right.
defending champion, of course. So this was a very interesting game. I kept waiting. It's one of those games where you had this suspense feeling, thinking that sometime Howard's going to bust out, and then it's just a 1-score game, and then who knows what happens. It never happened. Never even came close to happening. Archmere's defense just did a phenomenal job, and they're off to the semifinals.
Yeah, so number 1 Caravel will take on number 5 Archmere. It'll be at Caravel. Either Friday night at 7 or Saturday, we assume at 1 or 7, probably 7. They like to play the night games there at Caravel. They got turf, they got lights. It's a great place to watch a game. So stay tuned. We'll get that information out to you as soon as we have it. All right, before we go to the bottom half of the bracket, I want you to remind you that if you're looking for somebody to take a picture of your son or somebody else, maybe a grandson, you want to give it as a gift, Andre Smith is the man you want. His website is Andre L Photography. That's EL. So it's AndreELphotography.com. Takes tremendous pictures. He's got a lot of examples from a lot of different sports on his website. So even if your kid's done for the fall and he's still going to play in the winter or the spring, and it doesn't have to be high school sports, he'll take them of any ages, and he does a tremendous job. He sent me some photos of my own son, and my wife looks at him and she's like, wow, so this is what it looks like when you have a professional taking a picture. iPhones are great, but only to a certain extent, and certainly not to get the action shots that they're able to get with those lenses that are as big as a yardstick, unlike your iPhones. And so be sure to check out his samples at AndreELphotography.com. That's AndreELphotography.com, a professional photojournalist for a lot of different organizations over the years, including the News Journal. All right, let's go to the other half of the bracket, Marty, and we'll start with St. Mark's and Red Lion, number 2 and number 7. St. Mark's came into the game with 1 loss. That was to Archmere, 28-14. Red Lion had 3 losses, but all to very respectable teams, including St. Mark's. I believe that game was 48-0. It was when they faced off earlier in the season. Lake Forest and also Caravel Academy. So when you look at Red Lion's schedule, they had 3 losses, yes, but they lost to 3 teams that a lot of teams in Class 2 would lose to for sure. And Marty, I watched this game. I had 2 screens set up, the big screen and the little screen. I had this on the big screen for a lot of different reasons. But Red Lion at the start looked like the word that best defines their team makeup: inexperienced.
Yep.
And freshmen. Their most talented players, with the exception of a few, are freshmen and sophomores. And I just made a couple notes here. They were quick kicking, and they had 2 of those quick kicks blocked. And I'm not sure how the other ones were not. And it was Evan Budinger doing the kicking because Sam Crossan is out for the season, injured. Yep. He's their kicker and their punter. They also had 3 sideline violations. And when you have 3, that means you get flagged for 2 of them. So again, maybe a little inexperience of a game of this magnitude. Now they're very well coached. Ken Anderson's a great coach. You don't go 8-3 and not have a good coach and a good coaching staff. So I think it was just a combination of a lot of things. St. Mark's was able to convert 2 third and 20+ yards in the first half and converted them to scores. And so, it's kind of mistakes like that. But then, and it was 21-12 at the half, and then St. Mark's kept going. Red Lion played tough till the end, played so very tough until the end. And so you got to give them credit for that. And of course, that starts with the coaches as well. But it's just really exciting to watch that young team hang with St. Mark's for a little bit, but then play it out through the end, which they did. And so it's going to be an exciting team to watch, in the future. But it was St. Mark's that took advantage of those, what we'll call freshman mistakes, and I'm not pinning it on the freshmen. I'm just using that term, figuratively. and they were able to take advantage of that because a lot of teams might not have been able to do that. And
Right.
St. Mark's did what everybody expected them to do. They beat Red Lion 45-18. I never felt like the score was that different because Red Lion seemed to be playing with them in just about every
They
facet, with
did.
the exception of special teams. St. Mark's special teams had an incredible night. And as we mentioned, Red Lion struggled a little bit, their kicking game in particular. And again, when you lose your kicker that's been kicking all season, that's bound to happen. So, so anyway, congratulations to Coach Ken Anderson. His team finishes up 8-3, and a spectacular year, and certainly a bright future for that Red Lion team. And St. Mark's, Joey Wright has got his team exactly where a lot of people thought they would be, which is in the semifinals against Wilmington Friends.
That's right. And for Red Line, just to finish up on Kenny Anderson, I mean, to go 8-3 with a freshman quarterback and a freshman running back as your starters, that's not easy to do. Those kids made a ton of mistakes early in the season. They cleaned them up. I actually got a note from my cousin whose son plays for St. Mark's that after that touchdown pass, like 62 yards from Budinger to Manley to start the game, and said, it feels like they just poked the bear. Like St. Mark's just woke up and realized this is not the same team we beat 48-0. And that's exactly what happened. They started to dial in. A couple of things I would love to hear from Ken about this. Was the punting. And the only thing I can figure is that Evan Budinger wasn't comfortable with the 12 to 15 yards that Sam Crossan usually takes. Carter Raisin's their long snapper, and he's done a phenomenal job getting the ball perfectly placed all season. And it was bizarre because there was either one or two reasons. One would be that Budinger wasn't comfortable from that distance. The other could be that they wanted to limit St. Mark's return game because St. Mark's wasn't able to put someone deep because they were still in an offensive set. Either way, it was a disaster. It just did not work out the way they thought it was. I think there was one good punt. The turnaround for me, and I think it was 7-6 St. Mark's at the time, was the 3rd and 30, where they were deep in their own territory. And it looked like, okay, if Red Lion can turn them over, get the ball here, they might have something cooking. And boy, James Campbell hits his receiver for 38 yards wide open down the field. And I want to point out, James Campbell did a phenomenal job last night. He started in place of Chase Padalano, who did a great job. It was for St. Mark's for the first half of the season. I know he got injured. They're not where they are without his contributions to the team this year, but he's been out injured. He's a junior. So James Campbell, the sophomore, stepped in. He's played very well this year. 3 touchdowns of 45, 28, and 36 yards to Logan Klein. That connection would just worked all night long, and Logan Klein made some really fine catches throughout that game. The backbreaker, I think, was TJ Martin's 89-yard TD run late in the game. Donovan Artis had a big 35-yard TD run. It just seemed like they finally decided we're just going to pound away at these guys through the air on the ground. I thought Joey Wright's game plan was fantastic, the way they mixed it up, because Red Line always seemed to be on their heels. And you throw in the punts that didn't work out and give them great field position. Again, Luke Watson's on that line, and he looks like he's 7'8" compared to some of the other kids that are out there. And you got him ranging in there from 5 yards away to try to block a punt. So it was kind of comical to watch at times. I was really impressed with St. Mark's, as I have been all season. They did what they needed to do. Again, a great job of mixing things up. And I thought that they really did spring to life after that Budinger touchdown pass. It just kind of woke up the sideline. You could see the energy change a bit. And all of a sudden they went out there and they were hyper focused. Just on one other comical note, I've never seen a team get 3 sideline warnings, 2 penalties in a game.
You tweeted it and I tweeted it right after.
Even the announcers were like, I'm not sure what this penalty is. And all of a sudden they give that sideline warning thing and throw the flag. And you're like, how does that happen? But to your point, I'm guessing that's 100% in. It was inexperience. These guys aren't used to. Remember, for the playoffs, you're getting the best of the best officials out there too. So these guys are going to be looking for everything. And it was a fun game for a while, but I also agree with your point that I never felt like this was a complete rout. Yes, the score ended 45-18, but it never seemed like Red Lion was, not that they were going to win the game, but that they were competitive and they worked throughout the game. But St. Mark's is just too much right now. And I think, I said it from the beginning of the season, I really think they're one of the true title contenders. And here they are, one step away from the championship game. So congratulations to Joey and his team.
Yeah, and one other quick note on the sideline thing. As I'm thinking about it, I wasn't even thinking about this last night. The St. Mark's visitor sideline in particular is very odd how it's laid out because the track becomes grass and then you have the sideline. And I was there for the Appo St. Mark's game way back in week 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on the sideline, covering the game from the sideline, and I was almost like, I'm not sure where I'm supposed to be. Am I supposed to be on the track, and this was before the teams came out. It's like
Right.
I literally said to myself, I wonder where the team lines up here on the sideline, and I had to wait and see. And at that point, I just basically stepped back and just stood on the track.
Right.
There is a lot of room, unlike some sidelines, so I was able to get out of the way and still be able to see. So in the defense of Red Line, in addition to being kind of inexperienced maybe in these big games and with the best officials there, that certainly could have been part of the problem. Now that I'm thinking about it, but still something you want to manage and something to learn from. I guarantee you that won't happen again next postseason. Guarantee it, because that's Ken Anderson's a good coach and they're smart kids. So anyway, so that the top half of the bracket. Number 2, St. Mark's advances, and they're going to take on number 3, Wilmington Friends, 49-12 winners over Lake Forest. And Marty, this game felt like it was a domination on one side by Wilmington Friends. They came in, they're undefeated. They've won every game by at least 19 points. They're averaging 37 points per game. Lake Forest is averaging over 35 points a game as well. They beat DMA in the first round. It was Lake Forest's first playoff win since 1995. And Marty, if you had told me that, I would have said I would have bet $1,000 that they've won a playoff game since then. I mean, I've been doing this for 15 years, which is, doesn't go back to 1995. And you always hear about Freddie Johnson and his teams, and they're always good, and they're always in the playoffs. I guess they just haven't won. So
that's right.
I would have lost that bet. But anyway, it started out back and forth on the first 4 possessions. Both teams scored on their first 2 possessions, and then it was all Friends from there, 35-12 at the half. Lake couldn't get anything going on offensive, and ended up being the 49-12. Quarterback Robbie Tattersall was a man among boys on both sides of the ball at the quarterback position and wherever he lines up on the defensive line, which varies. He was just a man among boys. And, that's the first time I've watched an entire game of his. I've seen a lot of highlights, and gosh, do I have a lot of respect for him. He's going to Yale. Not 100% sure whether he's going to play somewhere on the defensive where he probably could, or play quarterback where he probably could. He could probably be a tight end if he wanted to.
Exactly.
He's got a lot
of talent.
Yep. So anyway, just a dominating performance by Rob Tattersall's team. Of course, the son of Bob Tattersall, who's no longer the head coach. He is still listed as an assistant coach, but the Tattersall family, 3 generations, heading to the semifinals next week.
This one, I feel bad for the Lake Forest offense because the first 2 possessions of the game, they put together 2 really long scoring drives. And it was 1 or 2 plays later that Tatnall would strike. And it just, I even tweeted, I couldn't believe that on every single play, a Friends receiver managed to get behind the entire defensive backfield of Lake Forest, but it happened over and over and over. And Lake Forest has been a good defense all season. Now, maybe this is due in part to how good Tattersall is, and they wanted to make sure they had enough guys in the box to stop him. Speaking of Tattersall again, too, he looks like he's a 30-year-old man playing against boys when these games start. And he's not overly big, but just there's something about his presence.
Right.
That just he gets the ball. And by the way, their offense is no secret.
No.
It's Robbie Tattersall right, left, and up the middle.
Right.
Until he decides to throw the ball with pinpoint accuracy to one of his good receivers. So I remember, I think I said last week too, that one of the games I watched, the first 11 plays of the game were his runs. And this game started off the same way. It was just him running left, right, and up the center, and no one can stop him. Nope. Now, credit to the line, which he did. I saw some comments after the game. That line is phenomenal. The running backs are phenomenal. And the reason I love the running backs so much on this team is they don't get the ball a lot, but man, they block.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And the wide receivers on the ends, they block. And that only comes with good coaching. And you've got to tell kids, look, you may not get the ball a lot, but you're an integral part of this offense, and here's your job. And they do it to a T. Tattersall, again, his numbers, 16 carries, 211 yards, 2 touchdowns. He completes 9 of 13 for 218 yards and 3 more. Just an amazing job by him. Andrew McKenzie is one of those running backs, 42 yards on 12 carries. He also had caught a 16-yard pass. He had 2 touchdowns. Jaden Willie 86 yards on 4 receptions. Jason Hughes, 77 yards on 2 receptions. Hudson Zawakis had rushed for some yards, also added a TD. I mean, the weapons just keep coming and coming, coming. And then, of course, Alessio Cristinetti Walker, 7 for 7 on PATs, another game where a kid goes 7 for 7. This team is just absolutely loaded. And by the way, and I credit this to Brad Myers, 5 touchdowns came on just 14 first half plays for Friends.
Hmm.
They ran 14 plays and scored 5 touchdowns. And that's where I think the offense I would have loved to seen, and I'm not sure what happened there, or if it was just an overwhelming domination at the line. But if the Lake Forest defense had played their normal level, their offense looked like they were capable of staying in the game, playing their offense.
Right.
Now, once they fall behind, all bets are off because
Yep.
they're having to throw the ball around, which they're not used to doing. So, great job by Freddie Johnson. A great season for them. They get to the quarterfinals. They just ran into an absolute buzzsaw. This is far and away. And again, I throw Caravelle in there as well. I just think Friends has just been amazing throughout this season, and we're looking at a pretty good weekend coming up.
Yeah, it's sure going to be. It'll be Caravel and Archmere and St. Mark's and Wilmington Friends. Again, we don't know the schedule right now. It's 12 o'clock noon on Sunday that we're recording, but we will release it on our social media channels as soon as we know it. So you'll know where that is going to take place next week. I've already had some of our listeners reach out asking that question since we got on the air this morning. And so we'll make sure that we cover that for you. All right, it's time to do our Class 2 top performers, brought to you by Mary Kate Johnson of Remax Associates. If you're looking to buy or sell your house, Mary Kate Johnson will help you do it as if it was her own. An award-winning realtor with 20 years of experience, she helped my wife and I both sell and then buy our new home 16 years ago. We referred her to dozens of friends who in turn have referred them to their friends. She understands the real estate market, unlike we do as general lame people, as I like to say it. So whether it's a first home upsize, downsize for you, a parent maybe, or one of your children buying their first home, make sure that you consider Mary Kate Johnston. Her website is marykatej.remax.com. Several 5-star reviews on Zillow. You can see them on the website. And if you mention her, you end up using her, you mentioned that you heard about it on the podcast, she will give you a 1-year free home warranty system policy, lack of a better term. We did that with her. We still have the same warranty that we continue to use. And so she gave that as a gift to us for using her as the realtor 16 years ago. We still use that year in and year out. So again, it's Mary Kate Johnston of Remax Associates, marykatej.remax.com. Make sure if you decide to hire, you mention that you heard about it here on the podcast. All right, Marty, I'm going to go first this time. My top performers in Class 2. It's the St. Mark's Special Teams. And it's certainly Dan Shannon, who kicked a 30-yard field goal late in the game. I thought that was a good decision by Joey Wright to give that unit that experience in the playoffs. Not sure if if he's had playoff experience doing that before or not, but it doesn't matter. You give that group, the center, the holder, and the kicker that opportunity. But they had big returns on the game, both from punts and kickoffs. They blocked 2 punts, as we mentioned, and they had great coverage on their punts. And so the special teams unit for St. Mark's and the members of that, starting with field goal kicker Dan Shannon, again, who had the 30-yard field goal, they are my top performances and performers that I have for Class 2.
I'm going to go with one unit and one player. The unit I'm going with is the Archmere defense, which was just phenomenal. They bent but did not break throughout the first half. In the second half, I thought they were a little more dominating. But again, just some of the guys that stood out: Aiden Ballou, 6 tackles; PJ Blessington, 6 tackles; Dom Anarino had an interception. Again, Howard came in averaging 34 points per game, and they just spent as much time in the backfield as RJ Matthews did. I mean, it just seemed like they were all over him from start to finish in that game. So congratulations to the Archmere defensive unit. And my second one is a guy that hasn't gotten a lot of press. And again, Chase Padalano started this season and led St. Mark's to a great early start. When he got hurt, James Campbell came in, sophomore. He has been fantastic. 3 TDs yesterday to Logan Klein. And I love the fact that as a sophomore, he looked great under pressure. He didn't panic. He stepped up in the pocket. He moved to his right, moved to his left, and was very accurate last night. So James Campbell in his, what I'm believe it was probably his finest performance. I know they made the playoffs last year, but this was just a phenomenal job by him. So James Campbell, excuse me, and the Archmere defense are my top performances of the week.
All right, there they are, top performers and performances for the Class 2 quarterfinals, sponsored by Mary Kate Johnson of Remax Associates. See her website at marykatej.remax.com. All right, before we preview the 2 semifinal games in Class 2 that'll take place next week, I want to remind you there's a 4th group playing in the state championship games on Delaware Stadium on December 10th, and that will be the conclusion of the 2022 Unified Flag Football Championship Tournament. It's been going on since 2013, and it's people with and without disabilities, students in their respective high schools playing on the same football team together. The quarterfinals take place this week. You can check them out. 3 of them are on Tuesday. Mount Pleasant plays at McCain at 4 o'clock, Middletown at Appoquinimink at 4 o'clock, Smyrna at Caesar Rodney at 4 o'clock, and Newark Charter hosts Cape Henlopen on Wednesday at 3:15, so they can beat darkness there. They don't have lights, and that's going to be at Newark Charter Junior High School. So if you've never seen Unified Flag Football, you got to check it out. Admission to the quarterfinals and semifinals is completely free. The championship game will be the first of the 4 games on December 10th. That'll kick off at 10:30. So again, the Unified Flag Football Championship, if it's your school, get out there, get the student body out there, the teachers, the faculty, get them out there to cheer on this special group of students, people with and without disabilities, playing together, more importantly, learning life lessons together and developing even more of a respect for each other on this game. So be sure to check out the Unified Flag Football quarterfinals happening this week. All right, Marty, let's go to Archmere at Caravel. And again, as we record, days and times have not been determined. This game will either be Friday at 7, Saturday at 7, or maybe Saturday afternoon. My bet would be it's either going to be on Friday or Saturday night at 7 with the other game in the other slot. If you like common opponents, they had one. They both played Concord. Both blew Concord out. This is 2 high-powered offenses, even though the Howard game wouldn't tell you that for Archmere. It is a high-powered offense. This Archmere team has been here before. Caravel lost in the semis in 2019 and 21, and 21-20 was the score. Looking at my notes here, hard to read my own writing. In 2019 was their last trip to the semis. They lost 21-20 to a very good Woodbridge team. It's going to be the toughest opponent Caravel's had all season. As we mentioned, they'll admit their schedule is not the best. Questionable, they're in that District 3, and just the way it shook out. The good and the bad of that is they had some easy games they played, and the bad of it is they had to travel downstate a few times. So good and the bad for that. Caravel's closest game was a 10-point win. Their win margin is 32.6 heading into this game. So this could be a very interesting game, Marty. Definitely going to be Caravel's toughest opponent. We thought St. Elizabeth was a couple weeks ago. They handled them very easily.
Yep.
But this Archmere team's a whole different level than Caravel is used to playing this year. So going to be an interesting one.
On paper, these are 2 phenomenal matchups. I mean, these are like 2 dream matchups if you were putting the tournament together. And I love the fact that neither of these is a rematch from the regular season. So we're seeing these 2 teams fresh. Caravel and Archmere, the big thing for me is going to be the line play. Caravel has dominated the line of scrimmage all year. So has Archmere.
Yep.
And the Archmere defense is coming off their best performance of the season. And you've got Chris Albero against a defense that's allowed only 49 points all season. It's impossible to turn, say how this is going to shake out. I mean, you've got so many, and they're not 1-man teams at all, especially Caravel. They've got weapons all over the field.
Yep.
Albero, if you shut him down, okay, they've still got some weapons too. And the one thing you have to worry about with Caravel too is the field goal unit, or with Archmere, excuse me. They can kick the field goal. They get down low. There was a few times this week with some different teams that I saw. Howard was one of them that would get down close to the line, but they just don't have a kicker to kick the field goals. So that's a bonus to these teams. This is such a toss-up game. And you look at Caravel and Archmere again on paper. You look at the schedules. You look at the statistics. They both do things equally well on offense. They run the ball extremely well. They throw the ball with great efficiency. Again, with Archmere, you just have to account for Chris Albero everywhere, because if he doesn't find something quickly, he'll take off, and he runs like a running back. He's not a huge kid, but he gets a lot done. I think one of the keys to this game is going to be Truman Awerdo, the Caravelle quarterback. If Archmere gets pressure on him, I'm curious to see how he responds. The Archmere line has been so good that the Millers, the running backs for Caravelle, may have some trouble there. And if they do, they're going to have to turn to throwing the ball. And Truman Awerdo is going to be put in a position where he could be the big man on campus. He's performed so well up to this season. His statistics are phenomenal. Again, he's one of those quarterbacks. He does not turn the ball over. Albero is in that same category, save for that one game against Howard long ago. But this is just going to, I feel like this is truly going to be a great matchup. If this is a blowout, I'm going to be so disappointed because it just lines up as a perfect matchup, especially when there's only going to be 2 games on the weekend. So they're both going to be highlighted and get a ton of people going to the games, a ton of press watching the games. So I'm just looking forward to this. And I get your popcorn ready for this one. I think this is going to be a great one.
And you know what? It could be a blowout for either team,
It
too.
could.
You know what I mean? Because that's the kind of firepower these teams have. You know, like you said, I'll be extremely disappointed. This should be an overtime game.
Yes.
You know, of all the games, of all the, you know, this should be the one that is the closest. So we will wait to see. Head coach John Reed of Caravelle trying to get his team to Delaware Stadium, win a state championship. He was on the team the first time Caravelle won a state championship back when they were in the old Division II. So trying to get him there. And of course, John Belace trying to get his team back to Delaware Stadium for the second year in a row. All right. The other game, St. Mark's and Wilmington Friends. It was number 2 versus number 3 is what it will be. St. Mark's has 1 loss. If you're one of these guys that likes to look at flow charts and stuff, St. Mark's lost to Archmere 28-14. Archmere lost to Wilmington Friends 34-9. So if you like that kind of stat, there you go.
Yeah.
It's going to be Luke Watson, who's heading to Temple, playing against Robbie Tattersall in the trenches when St. Mark's is on offense and Tattersall plays on the defensive line. Tattersall, of course, heading to Yale. And then it's going to be senior quarterback Robbie Tattersall against, at least we think, sophomore quarterback James Campbell.
Yeah.
And unless Castagna comes back, or not Castagna, his name escapes me. The St. Mark's quarterback who was injured.
Okay. Catalano.
Unless he comes back and plays, which will not sure he's been ruled out or what his injury thing is. But either way, you've got a very experienced quarterback versus a sophomore quarterback who played very well in the quarterfinals. So going to be an interesting matchup for sure. Again, we assume is either going to be Friday night at 7 or Saturday night at 7, hopefully opposite the other quarterfinal game. So again, going to be another very interesting semifinal. And as we talked about, Marty, at the beginning of the season, this class 2 was going to be the one with the most parity. And it's really turned out to be that. You have 2 matches in the semifinals, 2 games that nobody's going to be shocked which team wins.
Right. I love this. I think if you're St. Mark's, you take some solace in the fact that Friends in the first quarter against Lake Forest had some difficulty with Lake Forest and their misdirection plays and getting the ball outside. And again, 2 long touchdown drives. If you're St. Mark's, I think you have a game plan. They've got a very strong offensive line. Donovan Artis and the other backs have done a great job throughout the season. I think it's going to come down to much in the other game when I said Truman Awerda. I think it's going to come down to James Campbell against the Friends secondary, because I think even though I think you can take some things from the Lake Forest game, I think they're going to tighten those up, Friends is, and it's going to be very tough going on the ground for St. Mark's. That line of Friends, boy, when they get going, they're just and I'm not talking about just rushing the quarterback. I'm talking about run defense. They're just stuffing everyone. So, and on the other side of the ball, I think it's going to be the line play. Can the defensive line of St. Mark's get to Tattersall? Can they stop him initially at the line? And the danger again is he's got such a strong arm and he's got good receivers on the edge. So anytime you think you've got him bottled up, he can uncork a throw and all of a sudden they get past your defense and you've given up a touchdown. This again on paper is such a great matchup. And I got some messages yesterday saying, I hope you don't say, this is funny. I actually got some messages saying, I hope you don't say this is going to be a close game because Friends is going to blow St. Mark's out. That could very well happen.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't. I don't think it will, because I think St. Mark's has the ability on both sides of the ball to stay in it. Clearly going in, Wilmington Friends would have to be the favorite because no one has figured them out this season.
Hmm.
Now, Archmere has been slowed down. Caravel has been slowed down at times. Wilmington Friends just hasn't. No one
Hmm.
has been able to figure them out at all. So Joey Wright's got a week now to figure it out. He's got one of his best team, the best team he's had in years. And this is a great opportunity for the Spartans. For Friends, Robbie Tattersall, he wants to go out with a state title.
Yep.
And they are primed to do it if they keep going the way they have been. So, uh, again, a toss-up game, I think, in my mind. But I do think this is one where clearly you'd have Friends as a favorite. Let's say we're going by Vegas lines, maybe a
Hmm.
7-point favorite or so. But I think this again has the potential to be a great matchup. If there's one game that could get out of hand, I think this would be the one that would happen, and it would only be because Friends pulled away. Now watch St. Mark's come out and blow them out 76-0 after I say that, but so they can thank us later for any motivation.
That's
But
right.
if one game were to get away with score wise, I would think it would be Friends, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is going to be two matchups that just go right down to the wire.
All right, so that's the recap of the Class 2 quarters and a preview of the semis. Don't forget, we had 3 other podcasts drop today. The first was discussing the incident that happened after the Smyrna Middletown handshake. That dropped earlier this morning. And also some fun facts and figures that Marty had. Also dropped the Class 1 recaps and the Class 3 recaps. Did not preview any of the state championship games that will happen, and we won't be until next weekend's podcast. So we hope you'll listen to all 4 podcasts, 3 others besides this one, and get a real feel for what's going on in the DIAA football tournament. Until next weekend, I'm John Buzby. He's Marty Sheehan. Have a great sports week.